And now we should be live. Hello everyone and welcome to today's Blender livestream, where today we'll be trying to make motion blur, but with splats, or basically paint strokes or something along those lines. So this will be a short stream because it'll hopefully be a very simple effect. So here's the breakdown. Step 1, I'll be finding a way and showing a way to put the velocity information onto our character right here, so that we can transfer that to our splats. Okay, so to do that, let's put in a simulation zone. Now, for this, I'm going to try to do this the simplest way possible. So we are going to have the geometry, have that be an input here, and we want to get the previous frame's geometry. So this should probably give us that. Let's do a little check by using the join geometry node. This simply shows us, yes, the previous frame's geometry. So we can sample that position and then get our velocity based off that. It feels very hacky to do it this way, but it works. And we don't need to do any like materials or anything like that. We just need to sample the index to get the position. So let me turn on snapping real quick. So what we simply need to do is get the vector, get the position input. Okay, I don't know why I did that. Get the position input. There we go. Then get the index. There we go. Should be good. And now we just need to store the velocity as a named attribute. So to get the velocity, we just need to subtract the old position by the current one. And I'll need to do a little check to make sure that that is accurate. There we go. I can put this here as velocity. Actually, I'm going to move this over to here so that that's good. Let me check the data. So here we can see when it's moving, we get this data. There we go. And then when it stops, no data. So I wonder, I think this might be giving me the exact opposite data of what I want. Because here we should see blue there, but we're seeing blue on the side that's going down. So I think we need to invert this in order to get the correct stuff. So here, let's see. That might be correct. We can see which parts are moving forward at what time, or is that moving down? Actually, I can do a little check using a set position node. If I scale the velocity and put it in as an input, we can see where it moves. So here it should just be the regular position, and there, I don't believe that is accurate. So here is it normally, there's that. I don't believe that's right, so if I do this, there we go, yep. That makes it go backwards 1 frame. Well, if I were to do that, it's not exactly correct. You can see that becomes very inaccurate. So there we go. This is the right way to do it, I believe, and I just deleted the velocity named attribute, so let me get that back into there. I'm just going to double check. Because this is supposed to be the previous frame, it should match up with the skeleton. Yeah, okay. Good. That is the correct way to do it. Alright, let me put this into a frame really quick. Just put that there and there. There we go. Do that and that. Do that. Alright, and now we have the velocity on our object. So let me go and show this in the shader editor. Just get an attribute, which I already have one for the UV map. That was for a different project, so we don't strictly need that, but it might come into play later on, even though it probably won't. So I'll just go and replace this with a regular UV map as to not confuse people and myself. Okay, let's put this right there. UV map. And let's just have the velocity here so that we can keep seeing it. Let's do that, let's move it up by a bit, just so that we can see the shading and the velocity as it's going along. So now that we have this, we can go and add in our splats to this. Let me label this store velocity. There we go. And now I could either put in a new geometry node on here, so that's all in the same stack, or I could have another object for this, which I think I will go with the second method, just so that we are not confused when we go from one effect to the other, even though we shouldn't have to touch the velocity one again. This will be sim stuff, even though they only, actually I'll label this geo nodes, because the only sim part will be getting the velocity, unless I want to spruce it up a little bit. Okay, that should be good. Let me just do that to make sure. Nice. Okay, so now in our other geometry node, let me just check the chat real quick. Alright, everything's going well. 5 minutes, not bad. Now we're going to reference the body, which has the velocity stored. I'm going to use a distribute points on faces node. So the good thing about this node is that it inherits the attributes that we feed into it. Everything that's on the mesh gets put onto here. So that works well. The downside is that it's not temporal. So the points on here will keep swapping in and out as the body goes along. I thought it, wow, that they are seeming to be static, and that should not be occurring before they would freak out. Huh. Why are they consistent now? Is that like a 4.1 thing? I'll check that out later. But since we have this, we can now instance on points. And we can put whatever we want into here. So I'll start off with a curved line. There we go. And I will have the velocity as the input for the direction. So align Euler to vector. We need this as the vector input. Kind of like what we do for trails, but with this one, it'll be motion blur. So it's like a trail, but a little bit different. And then we need to get the length. And then plug this into the scale. There we go. So we should see if this works properly. All right. Very good, very good. Even though the one downside is that on frame 1, it does that, which I'm not the happiest about. Yeah, not the best. I won't worry about that, but here we can see the motion blur trails from one particle placed to the other. I'm really surprised that the distribute points on faces node is deciding to be consistent. Because last time I checked, it would very much not be when there was a deformation. Which means that under the hood, this must be referencing the rest position to distribute the points. Let's change this to poison disc. Let's see if it's inconsistent then. Wow, okay, this changes a lot. Wow, was it always like this? I don't think so. I am using the 4.1 alpha. Okay. So, yeah, interesting. So what I want to do next is that I'm going to swap out our curve line with a plane. So in this version, I'm going to make it so that the plane is facing straight up. And I want it to make it 1 meter in every direction, just so that the distances will be accurate. So I'll make this our splat object. There we go. And I'll just change this to another color to make sure that that part is working as intended. So instead of our curved line, we are going to replace it with the splats. Here we go. Let's place this into here. And we should see that that part is working as intended, I believe. Seems to be. But you can notice that there's just a little bit of an issue. Our splats, or our cards in this case, are not facing the camera. They're just facing forward. So to make those face the camera, we need to take into account the camera position. Now, unfortunately, we don't have an active camera node that might be coming in 4.1, but I'm not sure we should hold our breath for that one, because it was in the works for a while, So for now, the workaround is just to put in our camera into the object input manually. And we would have to swap it out for the next camera at any given time. That's the wrong camera. So if we do this, we can get the offset to our camera. We plug this into our align Euler to vector node. And let's have the rotation, the pivot to be on the Z, and the facing to be on the Y. So this should mean that when we move this, yes, they all face the camera. Very nice. So there will be some clipping, but I'm not going to worry about that all too much, because that will be for the refinement phase. Okay, we're at 10 minutes. Not bad at all. Let me place this here just so that's a little bit clear. But yeah, with the distribute points on faces being consistent with a deforming mesh, that is extremely good. Oh wait, looks like we have a few little issues, potentially. With the cards facing the camera. Maybe they are the wrong way around, even though, no, that shouldn't be the case. Not sure why that's happening. Yeah. It should be working as intended. Huh. Maybe... Okay, let's take... So... No, that part works correctly. Maybe I need to do that first and then that part second. I think that might just be an order of operations problem. So it seems like that gives better results. So I'm just going to do that. Okay, I can worry about that later. So now let's go and put our texture onto our splat. So this should be fairly easy, but just to show off one little trick, because the distribute points on faces node inherits the attributes, I can go and put the velocity into here, and if this is set to instancer, we can see that the velocity gets transferred to our splat cards. So we can say, hey, if you're going fast enough, glow, or something along those lines. But for the moment, we don't really need that. What we want is to put a noise texture in that will look good. So let's go and get the UV map of our card and just put in a little gradient for all this. So let's get the distance. And I could either make this a sphere, or I can go and make it maybe... I think for customization, I'm going to separate the X, Y, and Z and use color ramps for this. Okay. Let's set it to linear, just like this. We want one gradient for our middle, and this one for that. There we go. Let's go and move this up. Math. Multiply those two together so that we have a very nice gradient. There we go. And then we just need to well, this will be a little bit more involved. To make it look nice, we need to have a noise texture. I'll have it set to 2D. We mix that into there using a linear light method. So I could use either the mix RGB set to linear light, or I could do it manually so I get more control. This should be fine. So here we can see that this makes it all nice and noisy. And then we go and use a color ramp to hone in the direction with all that. So let's go and use a vector math, set it to multiply so that we can get like the proper speed lines look. And this will need a lot of refinement, but just to get the basics down, this will be good. Let's set it to alpha blend and shadow mode to none. So here we can see, as it's going, we kind of have those going at the moment. It is a lot larger than it should be. It should be smaller. and look quite a bit better, but for now, this should be fairly good for our purposes. So we could just make it kind of, you know, speed liney and all that, but we need to do a few things first. We need to go and randomize the texture so that we're not getting a super repetitive pattern. Let's do that. And now let's go and add to there with the object info node. So we want the random input, as we can see here, it gives us a random input for every single one of these. So I really hope that's consistent with all this. Yeah, it looks like it is. So we just want to multiply this by like 100 or 1,000, either or. And now that will give us a randomized version of the noise texture per one. So I'm going to do that after the scale so that I can multiply the scale without it looking super duper weird when I'm moving it. So here, let me rewind. Pause. So here, I'm just going to make it so that that's like that. So we should see a much more randomized texture. So here we have something like that. And it looks like I may need to use a mapped range node because the values go below 1. So we're getting a harsh cutoff when we should not be. So let's go and swap this for a smoother step map range. And then go and constrain this one. Oh, it goes above 1. Okay. So here, we do that. There we go. We're getting more of those, like, again, actual speed line kind of effects. So there we go. And again, hopefully I can improve this by a significant degree. Let me plug in the velocity for the base color. Oh. Oh, that's why. So here we can see, like, it needs work, obviously, but it is functioning for the most part. So I'm going to pause it. That is a very funny pose for the action frame so that we can see all this well. But the main thing I'm seeing right here is that since we need to compensate for the kind of fade off the transition, that part is not quite right. So I need to bring the physical mesh down so that it actually interacts with it. So that should be good. Then I think the other thing that I may need to do is I may need to make it so that the splats, like the ones in the back here that aren't moving enough, kind of get clamped. Maybe. I'll need to check on that. And here we can barely see it. And I think that, yeah, I think that's a result of this just not being enough. So let me scale it up a bit. There we go. Now we're getting something a little bit better. And the texture is still rather crud, so let me go and uncrud the texture. Let's set this to 0.5 in the distortion, because I want the kind of fire look, but it should be very, very stretched. There we go. And I also feel like the animation is not moving nearly fast enough to warrant this. But we'll see about that. Like, if I were to speed it up, what would that look like? I may have to undo it just because information will be lost, but dang! Looks like we have a mismatch in the cache. Okay, that's very funny. But we can see that, yes, it is working. So that's one, okay, that's a problem. Since the scale of the sprite, the splat, goes up, if it starts moving faster, they scale up on every axis. So we get stuff like that. That is not the best. And I wonder why those are freaking out and lagging when that happens. I'm going to assume that's because of multiple alpha planes just clipping over each other. Because there are way more alpha planes than there probably should be. So let me go into the GeoNode editor. We can use a combine XYZ node so that we can choose the scale for these. So something like that will probably work just fine. So that no matter how gigantic it gets, it will still be accurate. So there we have that. Just scale it up so that it's good enough. Like, I need to think about this for a quick second. I'm starting to think that the issue... Which one have I selected? Ah, okay. I think the issue is that it's looking very clumpy when it should be... One, clamped to the parts that are moving very fast and not everything. I can do that in GeoNodes. And then affecting... Where is the... Oh, okay, there we go. I keep selecting the exact wrong one. Let me go and do this. So I think the straight ones look fine. Maybe even better. Just to have like the really noisy parts, but I don't like how separated it is. So I could just do that to get, you know, more of it, but that makes it look smoky, and maybe that's what we want. I want to go for the very stylized version, but I think that needs the clamping function that I described earlier. So I can just use a map range. And then, a clamping function. Maybe like 0.5. Plug this into there. No. Like, yeah, this is going to be interesting. Okay, what's the big issue here? Like, it only moves very, very little during the events. So that's more of the masking that I was going for. But the issue is that that does not compensate well enough. So there, we can see do, and then that happens. So we're getting something quite a bit... Yeah, okay. So I need it so that the bottom, I can accelerate the clamping, essentially. But then the top goes to where it normally would be. So 0.3 and 0.3 on there, and then... Even though it seems like the motion blur is not enough. So maybe I need to scale this by even more. But I am suspecting that that's just a shader problem. Because as we can see here, only a little bit of the card is actually being used, when a majority of it should be being used. So we should see a lot more of this. And that should probably be... like that. But now it looks way too big. So let me go and soften it again. Okay. If push comes to shove, then I can just say, hey, let's just go and chop off that part, that top part of the splat. And we'll be good. Yeah, the main point is so that frames like this actually have the splat parts working. Here, let me go and put this here so that we can move that. That's a good frame, so that we can actually see the design. And then also, I want to put the length into this part as well, like we had before, but I'll need to clamp that as well. So let's just clamp that at the value that we want. So let's just have 0.3 for both of those. Does that make it look better? So there, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, so like that. Yeah, okay. I think the rest will be on the shader's responsibility. Control J. Let's go over to our splat. Funny thing is, because I wasn't expecting the distribute points on faces node to be consistent with a moving mesh, I thought that these motion blur frames would regenerate every frame, so I would not have to deal with ones having to deal with the consistency. I thought it would just be like, oh, we're good. It'll give that kind of flickering effect that looks good in 2D animations. But no, we have to deal with the actual consequences. Actually, for the full effect, should I make this 12 frames per second? The stream is in 30, so it will not divide properly. But maybe just for fun, I will try that. So let's scale the animation by 0.5. Dang, that looks so choppy. Let's redo that. Interesting. Like, I also want to try having the splats as... There we go. Words are escaping me at the moment. As, like, a harsh cutoff. But I have a sneaking suspicion that that will look absolutely terrible. So let's put that to the test. Suspicions may be confirmed. Like, another thing is I want to try moving the splats more towards the camera so that they will overlay like that. Dang, that does not look good. Okay, yep. Let's undo that by a bit. Like, maybe we can have it a little toward the camera. Actually, I could just... Yeah, okay. Yeah. I can go and translate... translate instances so that they... Not local space, global space. So that they move towards the camera. I probably won't keep this, but just for testing, of course. So here, instead of that being like that, it'll do that. And then I can normalize this and make it a set amount. So here they will always be in front, which in hindsight is kind of a bad idea, seeing how the occlusion is not great. So here we can see the offset from that. This is an interesting experiment. Maybe not the most... If I make it in back... Like, another issue that we are having is that since the movement is doing this, we get very, very ugly paint strokes like that. Which I think is why I wanted to scale it down on this axis. Ooh, that actually doesn't look too bad. I wish I had a better animation. I do have a running animation that I could pull. Maybe that would work well. Okay, we're almost at 30 minutes, so I should probably wrap up the stream. We have a version that mostly works, even though I was hoping to not have to skew this nearly as much. But, yeah. Yep. Okay. For the material, should I have the character be emissive? I don't know. Probably not necessary. So, it works, but not as well as I would like. Not as well as I would like. Again, that's probably just a result of the graphic that I am choosing for this. And it looks like we may actually need to linear light this, but with values greater than what this can handle. Even though with the actual mix node, if we set this to color, we can unclamp the factor and then just make that work. Funny thing, with the mix node, I set it as a quick favorite in one of the old versions of Blender before they updated it. So this is the old Mix RGB and this is the new one. I kind of prefer the old one just because it's, you know, significantly smaller. But, yeah. Funny little thing right there. So here I can just swap it out so that, yeah, it's almost twice as tall. I know it gives better results, but it feels like the UI is being sacrificed for more options. Well, not sacrificed, but, you know, it's becoming a little less compact and easy to use. I understand why, it's just a little, you know, big. So yeah, we could do that. Like there. Like I could just make it so that instead of them being sticks. Actually, wait a minute. Yeah, these are moving way further than they should. Let me just tone that down by a bit. On the GeoNode side, here, let me go back over to here. I want to get rid of that. Yeah, okay, let's just keep that normal. Just for cleanliness' sake. Let's go and move you up to here. For ease of use, face camera. Face camera. And then this is just the scale. So let me set this to 0.1. There we go. So, yeah. It's decent, but I wish I could make it better. Like, I think the one thing that could make it better is if I saved 2 previous frames and then made the trails. I think this is as good as it's gonna get. Like, the one other thing that I could think of implementing is taking the normal and then comparing that to the velocity using a dot product, and then kind of masking out the ones that don't follow it. So here, okay, viewer, we can see which parts are moving against, or moving in line with the velocity. So these ones are moving with the velocity and the normal. They're in very similar directions, so they're brighter. While the velocity parts that would jab into the body against the normal, give values either 0 or -1. I'm forgetting at the moment. But we can use that to mask out areas that we don't want to jab into the character. So the bottom ones we can eliminate by using a map range and saying, hey, the ones that are closer to 0, just kind of, you know, forget about them. And then the ones that are very close to 1. Yeah, let's set this to -0.5 to 0.5. Or, okay, 0.25. So -0.25 to 0.25. So this makes it so that the ones that are going against the grain are doing better. Let's see, let's just double check. Like if I have this at 0, then it'll just be those that are visible. Which, as we can see, it's potentially better. But if we want more... So, I believe at 0, it would be at 90 degrees would be the kind of cutoff value. So, if we want it so that the ones that are like on the edge are still there, I can do that. That might be good. So, there we go. So, yeah, that's a way of getting kind of a splat motion blur method. It's not as good as I hoped it would be, but maybe it just needs more refinement. Again, this is about 30 minutes of work. Okay, not the worst, but not the best. Again, needs refinements. So here, I'm just going to plug in the map range again, because that gave us somewhat better results. More of a smoky effect rather than the alternative. Then I'll just extend that by a bit. I could turn the scale up by a bit more. Let's take a look at our kind of final results. At the camera view, because that's where the splats are pointed at. I don't know. Would it be better if it was randomized per frame? Let's just give that a simple test, just to see. Maybe the consistency is our downfall. So let's try this out. Not sure. Actually, I do really want to test if this truly is consistent per frame. I'm going to go and just scale up one of the body parts. It's not. Okay. So I was right. The distribute points on faces is not consistent per frame. It's consistent if the mesh is deforming, but new ones will spawn in, which is not great. So it is bound to the mesh IDs. But if it scales, that will... I wish there was a consistent point method. I had to make my own, which was not great. To make it so that there would be a consistent amount of points, even if the mesh, like, scaled up, scaled down, deformed. But I think with this one, because there are so many faces, we don't really have to deal with it all too much. Yeah, there's that. Any last things that I want to try? I want to try this being stark red, like fire. So let's try that. Roughness, let's go and move that all the way up. Let's make this like an orangey color. And then this part, we can just... Yeah, the guy looks like he's on fire. So here it's... Voronoi, that's what I should try. We're coming up on 40 minutes, which I didn't want it to go this long, but oh well. And the Voronoi in 4.0 has gotten bigger. Both the noise and the Voronoi are getting bigger in 4.0/4.1. And I hope they implement subpanels into them soon, because I think they will just keep expanding more and more and more, which is funny. Very, very funny. So let me try a different method. No, we don't want that to be inverted. Interesting. So something along those lines. I don't like the small ones. The small ones feel like they ruin everything. And it feels like that's mixing too much into it. Interesting. I think I may just need to fiddle around with this a lot in order to make it look good. Because the scale should be very, very short, because it should be like 1 frame's trail. Oh, and another little thing. Maybe I'll end the stream showing off another version of this effect that was mesh-based. With an old version. There we go. That could be kind of cool. Yeah, I think the sprite version isn't that great. Could have been. But not in this case. So, one thing I will show off as just the kind of last little part. Let's have this be geo. We can have this applied to the original mesh, where I could use a mix node. I'm just double checking that this will work. Okay. We can use a set position node and then use a mix between the old position and the new one. But then we can compare the normal of, well, okay, let me showcase this first. I'm going to save this in its current state so that when I mess it up, it won't be bad. So this is a different effect. So I'm going to mix between the old position and the new position. And we can mix this with a random value. So here we will see something very interesting. That the character is now an abomination, mixing between the previous frame and its current frame. Now that looks really bad. But if we take into account the normal from the previous frame, or no, we just need the normal of the current frame. Oh, this makes it a lot easier. This is a better version than the one I made previously. And if we use a dot product, we can go and, well, I need to get the velocity again. Let me use the subtract node once more. Subtract, I think, which one goes on the bottom? I keep forgetting. Anyway, we can just visualize it here in the viewer. So here we should see the parts that are in line. Yeah, that's correct. So the ones that are in line with the velocity show up as white, and the ones that are not show up as black. And we can use this as a kind of mixing factor. We can flip that around, and I think, yeah, it still gives the same results. Dot product. I don't use it nearly often enough, but I should. So if we use a map range, we can have that influence our noise. So that only happens in parts that are in line with the velocity, as we can see here. So the ones that are not in line do not do that. Let's have this be like 0.5. Yep, and we can extend that to be even further, but I think that's just fine. Alright, so let's take a look at this. So here, the motion blur is now on the actual mesh instead of the other one. So we get very nice integration. The thing is, now, what if we wanted to see a little bit of this in the shader editor? Well, we can store the dot... I should store the velocity in there as well. I'm just going to store the dot product. I'll just label it dot product. So dot... yeah, simple enough. But if we go and access this in the shader editor as an attribute, we can go and take a look at this, and we can see which parts are highlighted, which is very nice. So now we can make it so that those parts are emissive orange. So emission, I love the subpanels, they're so nice. So we can do that, and then boom! Even though this still feels a little not random enough. Like, I thought having you here would be good. But maybe we need to make this a little more drastic. Oh, yes, we can make this a Boolean value. A random value that is a Boolean. So that we get... Had disappointed. I thought it would give me very random results, but this... I don't think this is it. It looks way too consistent for my liking. There we go, that's a bit more like it. There we go. Just a little more of what I was expecting. Even though it's still not the best. I'll have to reference my old version to see about that. Even with no offsets, we can see that, you know, that's the kind of direction, which parts are in line and which ones are not. So with our motion blur method, it still works just fine. Even though I'm still a little disappointed, it should be looking better than that. Like, it doesn't look particularly bad, it's just parts like that where it's not completely in line, just a little bit off. So this is a different effect from the splat version, so I should probably save it as such. Let me go into here and restrain the color ramp by a little bit more. Oh, wait, I know what I should do. Okay. The reason it's looking a little bit off is probably because the dot... I should probably store this as our mix gradient. So I'll label this mix G for mix gradient, so that we can actually see the values in the shader editor instead of... There we go. Okay, so now only the parts that are lit up. There we go. That's a bit better. I am rather satisfied with that result. I will read the chat because I see that's quite active before I get going. Looks like this will be a 1-hour stream. Fun. I keep trying to make the stream shorter because I'm, if you can't tell, just a little bit burnt out. Well, fairly burnt out in GeoNodes because of, well, there's there are a few main features that have been delayed by a few times that I really need for next things I'm working on, mainly like simulation materials, the for-each loop. But yeah, okay. So if I use a power node, that will make the fall off on this better. I will get to the comments in a second. So if I change this to be like 500, there we go. We could do something along those lines. I don't think the power node is doing quite as much as I want it to. So that could look good. So those are two methods for making the effect, for making mesh motion blur. One is with splats, which I could get working well, but I'll need to refine it, and one is on the physical mesh, using the topology. So ones with lower polys won't look as good, ones with higher polys will look severely noisy. But it works well enough. Though that is quite funny seeing that work. Let me go into the GeoNode editor. So I could do that, which actually that's pretty funny seeing it like, oh, ascending. Oh, and wait. If it's 0, then it should be fine. Oh, wait, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I need to clamp that so that I can't go below. Or actually, wait. Huh. So that can't go below 0. I guess that makes sense. If it defaults, yeah, if it defaults to 0. Yep. Yep. So I could put in a safeguard where if the velocity is 0, and it doesn't do anything to fix that, but this should be fine right now. This effect is mostly based on the dot product here. Taking the velocity, just right here, comparing it to the dot product. Here, let me go and fix this up. So this one here is the velocity. I'm going to make two versions of the body, one that stores the velocity for the other sim, one with the current mesh version and all that. So this will be the old position. Yeah, let me fix up the file. Old position. I'll get to the comments very, very soon. I apologize for delaying so many times. Okay, so that is our mix factor. I guess I could just reference that named attribute and then say, hey, just do that. Reduce the spaghetti. Which, me being Italian, that is a cardinal sin. So let's just do that for the mix gradients. A bit more spaghetti than I would like, but it's fine. It is fine. Okay. Okay, before I forget, I'm just going to copy the body, copy this GeoNode setup, have this be mesh blur, motion blur. Mesh motion blur, good. Body 01, that's fine. And then this one, I will fix up so that this is the velocity version. There we go. So let's connect that into there. So that it's better. Whoops. Still a little bit broken. There we go. So here we can now have the nice and way more compact version. But I just want to see if the splats are working as intended. So let's hide that version of the body. Let's see the splats. Okay, splats are working as intended. Good. So we have both versions up and running. Let's hide. Okay. Let's have this one as another one. Have it be mesh motion blur. There we go. So now I can just hide one and keep the other. Very nice. You know what? No, it's fine. I don't like these parts crossing paths. But, It's fine. It's annoying, but it's fine. Okay. While this plays in the background and you guys get to watch it over and over and over again, let me read the chats. I missed a lot. My apologies. Okay. So the distribute points on faces is not upgraded. It still adds in more points even if the mesh is deforming, which is still unfortunate. Which I had to make my own version that only works on triangles, which is really, 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 really annoying. But it's the only way currently. To have points that deform on a mesh where you just don't need to worry about new points being added, consistency, and all that. Okay, the rotation for the splats, I'll have to look into that. Does anyone know how much modeling one should learn before starting with geometry nodes? For geonodes, you don't really need to know modeling, but knowing about mesh topology is probably a good idea. Like, you don't need to be good at modeling to get into geonodes because it's mainly procedural effects, while modeling is mostly manual, but will help you out quite a bit. Geonodes is usually reserved for last when it comes to like the effects that you want to do, because this is pretty advanced. If you know coding, then geonodes will come a lot easier to you. But if you don't, So I would recommend knowing modeling first before you try the advanced stuff, because this stuff is advanced. Okay. Hey Caramel, it's been a minute. How have you been? I've been good. Yeah. I have been good. I've been, again, a little burnt out on all the geonode stuff because I feel like I've been remaking the same effects over and over. Like this effect I made before 3.6. This was made in 3.5 when simulation nodes were supposed to be in 3.5. So, yeah. And that was like 9 months ago at this point. And that version of geonodes, materials worked, and this one, materials don't. So simulation nodes regressed from that point, besides the caching function. So it feels like the tools that I'm working with still, like, it'll be maybe a year until we get material, or it'll be a year from when I first made this effect that we'll get materials back in simulation nodes, because the fix for it got delayed from 4.0 to 4.1. So yeah, I'm just a little burnt out on waiting for things to be fixed and then they get pushed back, because that keeps happening. Like, I'm expecting the 4H loop to be pushed back to 4.2 or 4.3 just because it's a trend with those kind of things. Like, subpanels were implemented in 4.0, and I was so excited about that because I was like, oh, I can implement into my GeoNodes products. But they weren't able to implement it in the modifier tab due to they started working on it, or they looked into it at the day that the feature freeze happens. They were looking into one particular potential roadblock, the day of. So they had almost no time to implement the thing that most people would see in GeoNodes, which is very unfortunate. So now every product that I want to upgrade with the subpanels, I have to push back by like 3 months to half a year, which is very annoying. I have many projects with GeoNodes and simulation nodes that I want to release. Ones that deal with simulation materials. I have many projects that include this one. This one, because the original object was dealt with simulation nodes, this one doesn't as a workaround. That one has materials wiped in the current version of simulation nodes. So I have to actively wait to bring those ones back into the present, or make a workaround. But for some projects, there are no workarounds for the materials because some simulations actively work with those. So it'll be like half a year until I can actually release those, which is really bad. It's not production ready. Yeah. And the ability to have materials in the simulation nodes got removed 2 weeks before the release in the beta, which is not great. So, in summary, for that, like 5-word or 7-word question, I'm doing okay, but GeoNodes has really burnt me out due to features getting delayed, bugs, and stuff like that. Okay. There was one person who I saw. Hello from Brazil. Hello. I didn't want to miss that one, even though, you know, it was probably delayed by like 30 minutes. Okay, we have 5 minutes left, so let's get moving on this. Purple looks pretty cool. Let's try, how does green look? And not quite as good. So it's the oranges, the blues, and the purples. Just stay away from the green. It doesn't look that great. Oh, what does this look like with none? Oh, that's pretty fire. That pun was not intended. But it is cool. I should try this out. Like if the velocity, again, I need to fix that one little velocity error where if nothing's happening, that happens. Because this is not reliant on speed, which is not the best. So if the speed goes to 0, it does not. I should probably say, yeah, I'll figure that out. And motion, like that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll post that version after I get the length from here put into map range so that I can kind of clamp that value if it is not moving. So simple thing right here. So here, let's set this to be like 0.1, so there. Oh, that looks oh, that's pretty cool. Okay. Good idea, Ben. Good idea. For those of you who don't know, my name is Ben. I know there's someone else named Ben in the chat, so just so that there's less confusion. There we go. That's not bad. Not bad at all. Could be better. Oh, that's pretty cool. That makes this effect worth it. Then I could use the power node in order to make the fall off a little bit better. And all of that. So I could do that to make it a little bit. I think that's a bit too much. So let me rewind just a little. Yeah, okay. Okay, we're running out of time very quickly. So let me go and do that. Angle compare. I guess that's the now I'll just label it dot product. Yeah, I think that's the best. And then the little safeguard right there, and then we're good. Alright. It is funny that this is what I do to get the previous frame's position. So dumb, but it is the fastest method of doing that. Extremely funny. Okay, let me save this. Alright, okay. Love your content. You are the best Blender nose specialist here in YouTube. Arendelle is very good. Arendelle, and there are many people out there that have way more math skills than me when it comes to geometry nodes. Many people come from programming backgrounds, while I do not. I'm figuring all of this out on the fly as I'm learning it. So everything that I've learned, it's from experimentation, while other people have the actual knowledge in their brain and how to make it work. Yeah, so I'm not the best. I'm not the best. I'm just very good at improvising when it comes to all of this. To make some cool stuff occur. Alright. I guess I could. Like this, I don't know. And this deals with the velocity, not the acceleration. So should I try to get the acceleration? Nah, it's fine. Yeah, this version's fine. Okay, we're going over an hour. I was hoping to not do that, but here we are. Because I keep delaying everything. Okay, for that one comment in Spanish, unfortunately I cannot read Spanish. Let's see. Interesting comments. Not Blender related, though. I'm almost thinking that's a bot? Interesting. Well, it's an inspiring message, so I'll leave it up. Unless that's to do with, like, a weird corporation trying to get ad revenue or something like that. I don't know, like, trying to get views. So I'll delete it just for being unrelated. Just in case. Just in case it's a bot. Okay, this effect is based... Yep, I already read that one. This effect is cool. It reminds me of Deku's powers from My Hero Academia. I've not watched that. But yes, motion lines I would assume are very prevalent in anime. I'm not a big anime watcher. But I've seen some, and it's very creative. The art styles are very creative. All right. Hi, good morning. Good morning. Over here, it is getting to be nighttime. But yeah, time zones. So I'm assuming you're somewhere, let's see. You would have to be past, Britain. So I'm assuming maybe around the Italy area, maybe into like the Russia/Middle Eastern time zone. Or no, if it's morning, then it could just be China. Yeah, no, it would be China. 12-hour difference, yeah. Because I was thinking, okay, right now it's like 1 o'clock on Britain, so just move over a few hours, so that's like 4 o'clock, but that doesn't make sense, so move the globe a little more over and you would probably be in China, or somewhere in Asia. Alright, no way already 4.1. Yeah, that's because 4.0 meant many of the things that were supposed to be in 4.0 got pushed to 4.1. So I'm going to be in 3.6 for the next while until 4.1 comes out. For other reasons, due to consistency with projects that I'm working on, but also because 4.0, a lot of the stuff got delayed. Many of the main things were either incomplete, like the subpanels and simulation nodes, or they got delayed. Like EV Next got delayed. EV Next has been delayed by 1 year and 9 months so far. It'll probably be delayed for 2 years by the time it gets released, or even more. Which is very annoying, because when EV Next was supposed to be released, I apologize for ranting so much, but EV Next was supposed to come out 3 years after EV came out. 2 or 3 years, which would have been good to have those upgrades then. But now it's been 4, almost 5 years when EV Next will come out. So EV for the past 4 years, I'm going to say 4 years just to be on the safe side. But EV has had very little progress since then. And when EV Next was supposed to come out, it was supposed to future-proof it for more upgrades, more features and such. But since that got delayed by 2 years, every single update, almost every single upgrade, has been delayed by 2 years. So all the real-time features we could have had at this point have been delayed by 2 years because of that. And I assume that's because developer time is stretched extremely thin at the moment. That's my assumption, and there was also something about Apple and their metal GPU stuff that might have been a limitation. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah. Many delays this season of Blender development. I think it was mostly COVID that messed up a lot of that, which is completely understandable. Alright, okay, let me read the rest of this. I was wondering, would you know if there's a way to make a face selectable to adjust the outcome? For example, a procedural building, you could click on one face and select if it is a window or a doorway. Well, you can do that. Oh, wait. You can't really do that with vertex groups because that is on the vertex domain. You can do that with vertex paint because I think you can paint on faces with vertex stuff. I'm not sure. Vertex groups would probably be the best, even though they would be dependent on the vertex domain, so it would be an interpolated result, but it would probably be the best we have at the moment. Because we can't directly... Oh no, the color attributes. Okay. Let me do a quick little check. So in the vertex paint, which... Huh? Oh, vertex paint is currently broken at the moment. Nice, nice. Is it? Yep, yep. Currently broken. Alright, that's nice. But you can select the faces, and then that seems to... It's on the face corner domain, so it's compatible with both. It's compatible to... It's good enough for faces. So I would recommend that, like, put in red on one part, green on another part, blue on another part, separate the RGB, and then use that for your selection process. There we go. Okay, what's splat motion blur? So with the previous version of this effect, which didn't turn out to be too great, I would use splats, aka billboard textures, aka just that kind of stuff to make motion blur streaks. But then I was like, that doesn't really look all too great, even though it does work. And it could look good with some refinement, I'm not sure. So I was like, let's try it on the actual mesh. So that version was a lot faster to make, because I've made it before in 3.5, before simulation notes got delayed and then broken. But I made it again with the proper workaround so that materials wouldn't break and yada yada. But that is another method that's rely on the topology, which is a bummer, but it's not that bad. Okay. Anyone knows a significantly worse experience when using the search feature for nodes in 4.0? Yes. Yes. They redid the search functionality so that's consistent along everything, but they also changed it so that if you were to do something like vector rotate, or what's a good one? Like with mix? Yeah, wait, what was the good one? One example that I ran into was where you would put in like math or some kind of node. Was it multiply? I forget. But the searching is now weird where it searches like the end result first before the first one. So if you're looking for a mix node, it'll search for the end result mix. Instead of searching for the actual node name, it'll search for like the input or I'm forgetting at this point. But yeah, if I would do like a math node, it would search for these first and then that, which has been a worse experience. It did get better from an old version because if I were to say drag off of here and then do a mix node, it used to be it would default to the float mix, which is not good. It would completely ignore the context. But then that was partly fixed, so that would be, you know, would actually do what the context would suggest. So it was even worse. But it's still not great. There was another worse version where it would keep showing only the most recent nodes that you searched first, which still happens, but only if you only type in a few letters, while if you type in more, it'll switch off of the most recent searches and then go to the actual thing you were searching for. So yeah, it's a bit worse than before. They are listening to feedback with it, with like the recent searches, but I foresee that similar to like the new add menu, the search button wasn't there and then they had to re-add it, and then there were, with 4.0, there were a few features where the community feedback was, this is worse, and then they had to revert it. I think search will be similar to that, because it's not as good. It has been more annoying to work with because you would type in, oh, multiply, and then it would be like, oh, wait, why is vector math multiply coming up first? Usually it should be like math multiply. Well, actually, no, in this case it would be correct because of context. But in other ways, in my workflow, I would be like, that's not what should be coming up first when I search for it. I think one thing would be like, here, when I drag up here and then use position, sometimes it would be the set handle positions first, but since I searched that one more recently, that happened. Like if I do here, it would search mesh to points mesh with just PO. And I don't get that. Why, instead of set position, it would go to mesh to points first. Like that's third in the list. Well, it's the second word here. Maybe it's going by, no, it's not even going by character. But why would it go to mesh to points first when it should be position first? Because that comes first in the, you know, the thing there. I think it's because this is a geometry input, while I might read this as a mesh input. So yeah, another thing is the 2 points node. It'll always default from mesh to points, even when I use a curve object. It should retrieve from the context that I'm using a curve first and yada yada. But it's not as good as before. Now it's only slightly worse than before, when in the previous versions before the feedback it was much, much worse. But now it's manageable. I think it may take some getting used to, but I think we might be able to get used to it. But it definitely has quite a few quirks that I think need refinement, which probably can happen if there's enough user feedback, which from what I heard with quite a few things in 4.0, there was very loud user feedback. I think that's what they said on one of the Blender Today episodes. I forgot, which one was it? Oh, it was, the search to type with the search function. So with that, with the new add menus, that would be in everything over here, they would be like, oh, instead of having a search tab right here, because that's just kind of wasted space, you would just type to search. And then users replied, there should be, including myself, but I kept that through the proper channels, not just yelling at the devs. Don't yell at the devs, whether it be on the Blender dev chats or anything like that. Put it through the right channels. Do it respectfully. Don't be a jerk about it. But, yeah. With the search part here, there would only be a little hint at the bottom here, as we can see in the very, very bottom. It says type to search, and that was the only hint. And then they switched it to space to search, which still works. But they re-added in the search bar right here, which I was super relieved when they kept that for 4.0. And that was even after the feature freeze, which that's how you know the feedback was very loud when they changed something in the beta. But yeah, having the search is very essential, because people who open this will be like, wait, where's search? But now that's there, we can just be like, oh, which modifier do we want to go with? Which one here? I'm not sure. Can we search in here? Oh yeah, with the actual search bar. Visual cues are very good. Okay, I will have to get going now. Okay, I hate searching math, and then vector math is like the 15th result. The good, like, vector... There it did come up first. But that's good. It seems to bias the second one instead of the first, unless it's a recent result. But now it seems to be context specific, so it did get better than before. Before it was not context specific. So if you're dragging out from a vector, it will be better, but let's try vector here. So here, it goes to constant vector first, which I think is okay. Vector math, yeah, that seems to be okay. If I use a separate XYZ, that's good. Color, that seems to be fine. Yeah. It has gotten better in the past week or... I'd say 2 weeks ago, I got to the decent version, but still not as good as before. I think they're trying to expand it so that it can search for, like, the things here. Oh yeah, like if you search for curve things, it comes up with the hair assets first before the actual curve. Like, this part annoys me quite a bit. Like, with the curve things, it should search through the actual Blender stuff first and then the hair assets second. Because this is not good. If I search for curve, it should come up with the curve operations first, not the inputs to the hair assets. Yeah, that's a perfect example. Because here it's like, wait, group curve tip, what does that mean? That's a recent search, and so on. But yeah, when it's curve, I would like to see curve read, curve operations, curve this, curve that first, not the hair nodes, because that's not great. When you're searching for a node, you want to search for a node, not one specific input of a node. Unless, like, if you're dragging a socket from behind like this, and you search for an input, like curve tilt, then that makes sense. But if you're just searching for a node, it should not come up with node inputs first. That's bad. That's not good. That's not good. Because how often are you like, oh yes, I want the tip index from the curve thing when I search up curve? You don't want that. So feedback. Feedback. I think the search was changed in 4.0 as well, just because of user feedback. So it's probably... I highly doubt that they would freeze it in the annoying state. The current state, I think it's the same between 4.0 and 4.1. And 4.0 even got delayed because of bugs and little quirks like that. So it was supposed to be out already, 4.0, but it got delayed a week because of bugs. It's probably just bugs. Alright, let me read the last few questions and then I'll be on my way. Yeah. I would love for a way to change it back. I think they will once the devs get annoyed when they tried searching it. Because user feedback is what caused them to change quite a few of the things in the 4.0 development. So I think when the devs hear more feedback or they see the worse workflow as well, they may revert it. Okay. Yeah. In terms of devs, like, I don't recommend chatting to the devs directly. I recommend putting it through the proper channels, like on the search project, putting the feedback there, and so on. The problem is that they work for Blender, not with Blender. I understand that aspect of it, and I agree to an extent. Since they're developing tools inside of Blender all the time, they don't do the workflow that is using those tools. So that, like, when the search was happening, when they got rid of the search bar right here, since they're working on the tools all the time, they don't realize, like, what new users would be like. They wouldn't be like, oh, the new users would be confused that it would be just type to search. They said in one of the talks during the Blender conference, they thought that it was just a thing you would have to learn about Blender. But that's not good. People that want to add stuff usually want to see a search bar in case they don't know what they're looking for in the many panels and sub-panels, and so on. So user feedback directed that because the devs didn't have that perspective. We can supply the perspective of the different workflows and what is useful for us, while the devs, they don't work on too many Blender projects. Like, during Wing It in Charge, they worked on some stuff for the people there, like the hair tools right here, were almost specifically made for Charge. They wanted to make a new hair system, but that was very much spurred by the Charge Open Movie project. And there was a whole node implemented called the curve operation, deform curves on surfaces, that was made, I think that was made to get Charge up and running, because it has no inputs, which it should have a UV input and then like several other options here, but it's a black box. which makes me think that was made rather fast to be compatible for charge. In a pinch, because those two were being made side by side, if I'm correct. And then with Wingit, quite a few nodes were made for that, but those are not put in default with Blender. I was able to salvage quite a few of those nodes, well, a couple of those nodes, like the shape key and UV tangent space nodes. I had to optimize them quite a bit because there were quite a few redundancies in there. But now I can use those in my projects and maybe put those up on Gumroad, which I still need to do. I needed that reminder. Okay. But yes, I do agree to a degree that most of these little quirks and issues with the new features are that they don't work on the kinds of projects we do. They build the tools, we use the tools. So when there's a problem with the tools, they might make the tool better in theory, but in practice it might not be as good. Like with the search functionality, it's like, oh, you can search for inputs now, directly for inputs of nodes. That is more functionality. That on paper is good. But when you're typing to search for a node, usually you want to search for the node, not an input of the node. So if here I want to type in cone, it's like, oh, I want the cone primitive. I don't want to search for mesh cone. So if I type in mesh, like I want to search for dual mesh, not input mesh from cone, if that makes any sense. Again, curve, I want to search for like curve to points, curve to mesh, or so on. Not group curve tip, not curve root, not curve info from the hair read. I don't want to search for RGB curves before the curve operations. So yeah, it seems, yeah, there seems to be quite the bias towards the inputs there. But yeah, the mesh operations, mesh to curve, should not be before the curve operations. So that's the current little quirk with all of that. It's better than it was, because there were many more quirks to search like a month and a half ago. But yeah. Alright, I'll call it there. I really need to stop going on these kind of discussions / rants about Blender features and so on at the ends of the streams when I should be turning off the stream. But yes, also, I'm using the new AGX color space, which is very good. I like it. Like, here's the old one. It's way more saturated, but it's not quite as accurate. So when there would be like a orange, Filmic would lean much more into the yellow, while AGX gives the accurate result. So yeah. Alright. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time. Have a good one.